All right, folks, so we have a new moon in Gemini in a couple of hours' time. I'm breaking my own rules doing the new moon in Gemini video now, as opposed to after the new moon. Of course, this time, the 24 to 48 hours before a new moon, are always flat and kind of tired and kind of dreamy, and you're releasing the last lunar cycle, and sleepy and pensive and a little bit dreary, a little bit hopeless. You know, they always have this kind of depressed energy. And then the new moon happens, and as the moon becomes more and more visible, we gather more and more energy. And of course, right after the new moon, we start the new lunar cycle. All very exciting. I look forward to new moons, and I look forward to the rejuvenation that they provide. This particular new moon, it is kind of packed for a certain type of opportunity. It is square the planet Neptune in Pisces. So the new moon is in Gemini. We've got the sun and the moon coming together to create the new moon. And we've got the planet Mercury following behind them in Gemini. And in the sign of Pisces, we've got Saturn and we've got Neptune. Now, as the planets Mercury, the sun and moon, and the faster moving planets go through Gemini, they will square, create a 90-degree angle, first to Saturn and then to Neptune. Indeed, a couple of days ago, as we've been heading to this new moon, Mercury, which is behind the moon and the sun, squared Saturn. On June the 25th, unless I'm mistaken, or June the 25th, in about a week's time, it is going to square Neptune. And the sun and the moon, of course, the sun within a couple of days of this new moon is going to square Neptune, and this is a new moon that's square Neptune. It's a pretty tight angle. We can't gloss over it. The sign of Pisces, where we've got Saturn and Neptune, has been under a certain amount of pressure. I think there's no other word that I really want to use. Since almost 2014, 15, 16, when the South Node eclipses occurred there. We had Chiron there at the time. We've had a Jupiter transit there. We've had, of course, Neptune at that part of the chart. Now we have Saturn entering it. In a few years' time, we're going to start to get the North Node in there. So golly, loss, new beginnings, endings, healing, the presence of wounds and woundedness, a necessity to kind of release an attachment to certain types of behaviors and patterns in that part of the chart, and with Neptune's presence there, there's loss of a certain kind, accompanied by things like gaslighting or lies, or smoke and mirrors, things not being clear, kind of having to release. With Neptune is such a tough planet unless you're being affected by it artistically or creatively or spiritually. It's a challenging planet because it creates a certain kind of loss through murkiness that drives home the point that things that are happening in the 3D kind of reality space or world aren't really that real, and nothing and nobody is ours. And that is helpful up to a point. We still have to kind of make it through this world with our attachments and everything. And now Saturn's presence in this part of the chart, in the Pisces part of the chart since March, of course, demands and asks that we really take ourselves seriously when it comes to the affairs in this part of the chart and put them in some sort of order, or there will be karmic consequences. And indeed, it may be as a result of certain karmic consequences that things are put in order, or there's restriction, or there's challenges. Saturn demands that we love ourselves to the point and extent of sort of probably the highest manifestation of self-love, which would be discipline. Disciplined, real, 3D approach to managing the affairs of the house that Pisces sits in your chart, and what that house stands for. And of course, this kind of self-love demands that if we love ourselves, we will act responsibly towards ourselves and responsibly to others impacted in this part of the chart, maturely. Now, all of that is fine, but with the new moon squaring these planets, it means that we may, as we have made our way through this last... Now, we've had Mars in Gemini for about 6 months in the second half of 2022, when Mars went retrograde and then direct. It went direct in the middle of January. So Mars didn't clear Gemini till about March, end of March, or April even, end of March. So we had that, and then we've had Venus make its way through Gemini recently. We've had Venus certainly square Neptune and square Saturn in March and April, and now here we are in June. And I'm sorry if those dates aren't entirely precise. I'm really just kind of pulling this out of the top of my head. Bottom line, planets have been going through the sign of Gemini and squaring Neptune certainly, but with Venus and the Sun and the Moon and Mercury, Saturn as well. Okay. Whether you know your chart or not, let me just drive home the point of this new moon in a couple of sentences. This new moon gives us the opportunity to take action, a lot of it through communication, because Mercury is still in Gemini, and stop, block, put an end to, manage, handle those parts of our lives that are kind of subject to murkiness or Neptunian behavior of a more challenging or negative kind. Things being withheld, gaslighting, things happening behind our back, things not being entirely clear, things being not completely visible, things being kind of murky and complicated. Deceit is a big part of this. Now, sometimes deceit can be intentional. I'm going to steal this from someone. Sometimes deceit can be unintentional, and what I mean by that is sometimes people can justify actions that affect our well-being under the guise of well-meaning behavior or something that is important to them. Sometimes people aren't even clear and can't even face that they are being deceitful. I like to say we human beings can sort of justify anything, really, and we can, we do. And so there is that kind of, so sometimes there's a really calculated and sometimes people just are complicated. And so, or a situation is complicated, or people are figuring things out as they go along, or whatever the energies are, there's an opportunity with this new moon. When it comes to a square, the opportunity is placed on the faster moving planet to take actions to release the square, so to speak, to release the blockage. And so in this case, with the new moon, it is our energy, the sun, which operates in a much more, we have planets that operate on a spiritual realm, and we have planets that operate on a more practical realm. The sun is one of those planets that operates more on the spiritual realm. It's much more our consciousness. I even will say subconscious. It's very much our connection to spirit, in a sense, and our soul, and what is happening in reality. With the moon, it's a very much our engagement with, our energetic, our emotional, our intuitive engagement with the real world and what we're doing here. So when the two of them meet up, there's this download, there's this connection. It's almost like an agenda is being set up, a to-do list is being set up in the Gemini part of the chart for the next 4 weeks. And part of a big focus of this agenda is to take on tasks that protect us from, manage energies, or move us past, release situations, people where the energies are murkier. And a lot of this has to do with where Pisces sits in our chart. And is there a connection between the people who sit in the Gemini part of the chart and the Pisces part of the chart in a way that creates a certain amount of stress or tension? If there's deception in the Pisces part of the chart, are there people associated with the Gemini part of the chart who are part of it, who are creating it, who are engaging in it? Some people may look at the new moon square Neptune as a source of stress. Oh my God, there could be loss, there could be deceit. I would encourage you to think about this new moon as a way to manage that, combat that, release situations that are of no good to you, move forward from them. Now, you don't have to, let's say this is happening in the job sphere, you don't have to actively go out and quit your job without having what the next thing is. But you could start the process of lining up that next thing and see how you can, or whatever that next phase is, and see how you can manage getting out of a situation. Or if it means that you have to take some action or combat certain forces or stand up for yourself or put a line in the sand or a boundary. It could even be that when you have to combat these kinds of energies, that you have to act a little bit under the surface or a little bit under the radar to figure out how you're going to manage or extricate yourself from situations that are somewhat trapping energetically, emotionally, and that you need to be released from. And again, the theme here is that kind of foggy Neptunian, gaslighty, deceitful, lying, creating loss through smoke and mirrors kind of energy. And you feel it instinctively but can't necessarily put your finger on it. And these are themes that have been going on for a while. They might go back all the way to 2014, 15, 16. Some of these might be much more recent. But you do have the opportunity, and with Mercury being both the ruler of this new moon and the dispositor of the chart, because Mercury is sitting in its own sign of Gemini, communication is going to play a big role in it. It could be direct communication, it could be communication that's a little bit more behind the scenes, but it's still still tangible communication, writing, speaking, sorting out, drawing the line. Could have to do with things like social media or technology, or who do you stay connected with, who do you not, where do you draw the line, where do you post, like all that kind of kind of ways of cleansing ourselves from energies. And things may happen out in the 3D that create this cleansing from us. We could something may come from the outside that gives us the opportunity to pursue something or move in a certain direction. Something comes from the outside that ends a certain situation that's had this kind of gaslighty energy. Or we may just have a certain amount of energy to combat this as well. Now, this deceptive energy continues to brew and be something that we have to combat very directly till the end of this coming week, till Mercury squares Neptune. Mercury squared Saturn a couple of days ago, so all of last week these energies could have been building. Mercury squares Neptune next week. The Sun and the Moon square Neptune now. There's an awareness of things that need to be handled, to heal, to release, and the communication will follow. And some aspect of this communication could be challenged or challenging over the next week and may require you to hold your ground where you see fit. Another planet that is very active at the time of this new moon, because these transits are encoded into this new moon, is Mars. Mars squares Uranus in Taurus. Mars trines Chiron in Aries. And the Mars Chiron trine is very strong. So you might find that you have the energy to pursue goals or protect your boundaries with Mars, the male planet, the pursuit of goals, the hunter-gatherer planet, or the protection of boundaries, conflict, sometimes created by the pursuit of goals, sometimes because others are crossing lines, and so lines have to be drawn. Mars is this kind of hunter-gatherer, warrior planet, protector, action taker. And with the emphasis on Mars, trining Chiron, healing wounds that have been carried for a long time, and woundedness and vulnerability. It could be that in order to take the actions that need to be taken that are protective and releasing from these kind of Neptunian, deceptive, gaslighty energies, or behind the back, or murky, or not straightforward, not clear, not clean. It could be that you have to, in the process of doing so, you heal and you solve and you tap into and you try and grow in those behaviors that keep you wounded or that keep you vulnerable to these kinds of energies somehow. So it's a standing up for ourselves in a way that we may not have done so before, or take action in such a way that also is healing to those aspects of ourselves that hold us back in somewhere, or that sap our self-confidence. Or with Chiron, these kind of wounds are long-standing psychological disabilities that we carry, even from childhood, that there's an opportunity through this action that's going to be taken, whether it's the pursuit of goals or protecting boundaries, to further that healing. In addition, one of the big agendas of this time is to pursue actions and tasks related to the Taurus part of our chart. That's where the North Node is. That's where the next eclipse is coming in October. And when Mars squares Uranus in Taurus, again, there's a need to pursue goals and to protect boundaries to continue to allow Uranus to do what it needs to do in the Taurus part of the chart, which is to make that part of the chart more authentic, more you, more independent, perhaps more unusual, but more authentic, which kind of goes hand in hand. The other transit happening at this time, of course, getting closer and closer, is that the node, North Node in Taurus, is squaring Pluto in Capricorn. And, you know, as we've said, again, leaning into these North Nodes is imperative to allow Pluto to make the changes in the transformation that it is trying to finish up in the sign of Capricorn. So, an action-oriented new moon, they usually are, but a kind of a, you know, there's a lot of energy and a lot of encouragement because the personal planets are direct right now. We still have another month before, we still have another month before Venus goes retrograde. Let's say at least another 3 weeks. There's a real need to continue to pour ourselves into the pursuit of cherished goals, particularly in the Taurus part of our chart, and to manage and handle the Gemini part of our chart so that we can block or stop any behaviors that are going to be deceptive or problematic or that are sapping our energy through gaslighting or through sort of Neptunian means. That's really what this new moon is about. I would be encouraged by it. Certainly over the next week or so, you might find that you are actively engaging in tasks, even if you're doing them under the radar, that are about combating and managing these kind of Neptunian energies. And do not be afraid to communicate, whether privately or in a group setting, as you feel the need to do so. Sometimes it is important to take actions that are a little bit under the radar as you're lining things up. But sometimes if it's a direct challenge, you may need to state your case. State what it is that you stand for. State what it is that you believe. State what it is that you're going to tolerate and not tolerate in a certain sense, or what you agree with or what you don't agree with. So that some of these energies that are sapping you in this kind of Neptunian way can be put to bed and you can move forward. But the pursuit of goals in the Taurus part of our chart remains important. Allowing Pluto to complete his transformation in the Capricorn part of the chart for the rest of the year is important. Acting responsibly in the Pisces part of our chart, with Saturn getting ready to go retrograde, is important. Those are the three primary priorities. This new moon allows you to tackle the energies that are distracting from that, either through deception, creating blocks, or just kind of sucking your energy through murky behavior. What do you need to release in order to... And the release can be either shutting certain energies of people or situations out, but release can also mean, in some cases, you do just have to pay attention to what actions need to be. If there's some sort of deceit actually taking place, what do you need to do in order to manage that? In certain cases, we have the opportunity to release some things. In certain cases, we have to combat things. So the energy is certainly there. And I would encourage us to think about it and take it. I'll leave it at that. I hope you found this helpful and useful. Feel free to share, comment, like, subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell icon, especially on top of the bell icon. When you click it, there's a squiggly bell. That if you click on that, you'll be notified when I do more videos. Thank you so much for subscribing and being patient with me as I put out these videos. Take care.